Good afternoon, everybody. I am Weather Dad. And since we are in the middle of hurricane season in the Atlantic Basin, I figured we'd go over some basic hurricane information. The National Hurricane Center has a hurricane season that starts June 1st and ends November 30th in the Atlantic. National Hurricane Center also monitors items in the Eastern Pacific and Central Pacific, which have a little bit of a different time frame for their seasons, but we're not going to get into that right now. If you live anywhere on the Atlantic coast from Maine, New York, Maryland, Florida, the Texas coast, in the Gulf of Mexico, you have the chance of being struck by a tropical system. Every coastline area from Texas all the way up through Maine has had some form of tropical impact. So instead of becoming complacent about it, let's get a little more knowledgeable about it and see if we can show you what the differences are. First up, tropical wave. When a system is first noticed, National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida refers to it as a tropical wave. They investigate this wave and will label it an invest. And what they're doing at that point is checking to see if all the conditions are favorable for the system to develop potentially into something more. What are those conditions? Well, the water temperature needs to be at about 80 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer. The winds need to be low around the system, otherwise it could shear it apart. And there should be a high pressure system above it, which would allow the system to vent. Again, I can go into more details about how systems like this are formed, but just want to stick with basics for now. So if we got all this in place, we have an invest. National Hurricane Center will look at this system and see if it becomes a closed-off area of low pressure. If this system does become a closed-off area of low pressure, it can be designated a tropical depression. While tropical depressions do not get names, they get numbers. It is the start of what could be a serious storm. As a tropical depression moves forward, it is advised on by the National Hurricane Center every 3 to 6 hours, depending on where its location is. If any watches or warnings are issued, they do advise sooner than later. The tropical depression has winds of less than 39 miles per hour, but still can pack a punch. Once those winds hit 39 miles per hour, it gets its name. These names are rotated every 6 years. They alternate between male and female, and the National Hurricane Center will name it whatever's next on the list. So our last named system happened to be Ernesto. For example, Tropical Ernesto would form at winds of 39 miles per hour. After 39 miles per hour, it stays a tropical storm, until it gets to 74. Still, at these conditions, a tropical storm can be just as dangerous as a hurricane. If it moves inland slowly, it brings with it torrential downpours of rain and lots of flooding. A notable one you can check on it is Tropical Storm Allison, which affected Texas and caused immense damage. Everyone knows about hurricanes, though, because that's the big thing. System gets named a hurricane when the winds hit 74 miles per hour. Keeps its name, and they keep monitoring it. As the system moves along, it can continue gathering strength as long as the elements are still in place, same elements as when it began as a tropical wave. Now, as a hurricane, however, they are much more harder to predict and become rapidly intensified if the conditions are favorable. We can get a condition of Category 1, starting at 74 miles per hour on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and goes as high as Category 5, which is over 157 miles per hour. That is dangerous. We will get into more on the Saffir-Simpson scale a little later on in my episodes as well. But right now I wanted you to know the basics of what's out there. And when you hear terminology like tropical storm, tropical wave, tropical depression, hurricane, you know what to look for. So with that being said, we're going to leave it as that. Hope you learned a little bit of something about what the differences are between all the tropical systems that are out there, and make sense of it when your local weather person or meteorologist talks about it. I'll be back at another time with another video. Like, subscribe, leave me questions and comments.